My name is Mike. I think we're going to get the slides up here in a second, and we can get started with just a little short. I just want to talk for a few minutes. This is me. This is how you find me on LinkedIn and Twitter and lots of places. I would love to hear from you and talk about the things we've seen today and things that you're working with in the future. One of the things I love about what's happening today is we're bringing a lot of reality to this space about microservice, right? I think that's really cool. At the same time, I want to inject some unfettered optimism here for a couple of minutes as well, and I want to talk about this notion of innovation. Innovation is incredibly powerful, and innovation involves managing risk, not avoiding it. So this is one of the biggest challenges in the innovative space is dealing with risk. There's some great innovation opportunities. Africa has twice as many mobiles as we do in the US. There's orders of magnitude many more people with computing today. There's all sorts of opportunity to innovate. And when you think about what innovation really is, it's changing what we already have into something else. It's not necessarily creation, but innovation, right? It's a great quote from Joseph Schumpeter. Innovation is the critical dimension of economic change. So we're at the cusp of this economic change. So this is a great, I love this quote. The reason I picked it, I know it's kind of hard to read. The example given is the company's failure to diversify and innovate. Is the example given of the definition of the word. I thought, well, it's a little passive aggressive, but we know what that experience is like. But I want to talk a little bit about what innovation looks like. And in fact, it does not look like this. It does not look like a well-oiled machine. And that's hard for a lot of us in organizations to deal with. It turns out innovation often looks a little bit more like watching ants run around. That's what innovation actually looks like. There's a great article by Ron Ashkenaz and Marcus Spiegel in the Harvard Business Review that you can read online, which talks about this very idea, that it should not run like a well-oiled machine. They actually use this notion of ant and adaptive behavior in comparing it to organizations or teams that have rules that they have to follow. Plans and rules can stifle innovation. A great example is when you have to apply to innovate. That's a problem. A lot of us experience this in our organizations or other places we know. I need to apply to be on the innovation team or the excellence group or whatever that phrase is that separates those from the rest. Right? And innovation is really about ants, not machines. It's not about plans. Deborah Gordon does this amazing study on ants. And she brings up this notion. We used to think that ants sort of like are born with a role, and that's the role they take. It turns out that ant colonies have no management level. And this actually freaks us out. We'd like to believe this is not true. We'd like to believe that this idea cannot be duplicated or replicated in humans. But in fact, this notion of not issuing commands, but about acting in context, is incredibly important for the survival of this species that is so diverse. There are thousands, tens of thousands of species of ants that have lived for millions and millions of years. So this is a real challenge when we think about the notion of no management, or they think about the notion of of following like ants and not rules. So let's just talk briefly about some conditions. I want to talk about 4 conditions that make innovation possible. One of the ones is this idea of a central mission, a powerful central mission, but a loose structure. In other words, I feel strongly about what I'm doing, but I'm not being told what to do. It turns out this powerful central mission and loose structure is exactly what the web looks like. This is actually a photo of the connections on the web. So we have a living example of something that acts like this and that lets others act like this. And one of the things that makes it so powerful is that on the web, you can write anything about anything and place it anywhere at any time without asking for permission. And in fact, I'm going to pick on Netflix again a little bit because Sangeeta was here today. This is a quote from Steve Urban. I have neither the place, the time, nor the desire to micromanage my team. My team is doing their job. My job is to make their work easier. So frequent interaction to maximize learning is another key innovation feature. The idea of sharing information, sharing. There's also a lot of talk about sharing culture in organizations that are good at innovation. And often the focus is on sharing mistakes, not successes. Lots of people have successes. The mistakes are what I can learn from you. Tell me what your mistakes were so that I don't make them as well. Peter Senge, in this great book from 2006, called the fifth discipline, and I swear to you I cannot remember what 4 of them are. But the 5th one is learning. The only sustainable competitive advantage is your ability to learn faster. Not learn more, not retain more, but to learn faster than your competitors. And what's the best way to learn fast? We heard about this today. Fail fast and often, right? Learning is this opportunity to make mistakes. So that's very, very important. The other one is constant experimentation. I was talking to John Moore today. You'll get to hear John speak again today. John was explaining to me how they were experimenting with their hiring practice in order to improve the quality of their hires. Experimentation is not a straight line. Often experimentation is this mess. And this is one of the things that makes it really difficult to support experimentation and innovation inside a large organization because you have so much unpredictability involved. These are the ants running around, right? And what's going to happen is when you experiment, you make mistakes. So building in this support for experimentation means building in the support for making mistakes. Now, I can't drill a hole in the bottom of the boat is the phrase, right? I can't sink the ship. And that means there are guardrails. That means there are ways that we set up to make sure that people can test. This is a great quote from Deborah Bull of the King's College in London. If everything we do succeeds, then we're failing. Because that means we're not taking enough risk. Right? If you're not making mistakes, you're not getting ahead. Now, if you're repeating mistakes, that's a different set of problems, right? If you can't learn from them, that's a different set of problems. Often the repeating of mistakes is because of not sharing, right? Because nobody told me that you guys had tried this 2 years ago and it failed, right? And the 4th one I want to mention is this freedom to look on the next horizon. Lots of organizations have different versions of this story. Google used to talk about their 20% time. Lots of organizations say you can work on something in your personal time. Lots of organizations make it possible for you to work on something that may not necessarily be your current track, but gives you this chance to look ahead. And often that ability to look ahead, there are people inside every organization that have their pulse on a trend, a topic, a technology, a technique that maybe the rest of the organization doesn't have. And if you give people the opportunity to look ahead, then that gives everyone an opportunity to learn that and act on it. So this really combines a lot with learning. So there are organizations who spend a lot of time on lunch and learns and evening programs and lecture series, sometimes in seemingly unrelated material in order to encourage people to look ahead at what might be possible in the future. This ability to look ahead comes out in a graph that's called an S-curve. Very often what happens is current technology eventually tops out. But long before that technology tops out, there's something else that's going to replace it. Looking ahead to that emerging technology, getting involved early on the curve, before it matches up, is a sign of an innovative culture. Often it makes no sense. We've seen this before. Why in the world would they be doing X? Well, that may be because they're trying to get on the next curve ahead. And in fact, this curve goes on and on and on and on. And companies who are good at this curve, it's called jumping the curve or jumping the S-curve, they actually can sort of reinvent themselves over and over and over again. Nokia has a long story that I can't really tell you. They started as a lumber company. And they made several changes before they got to telephones. But each one was jumping a curve into the next technology, looking ahead. And of course, there's a book on this very topic that you can read. This idea of jumping the S-curve, it means often what it looks like is you've got some chaos, some apparent chaos inside the organization because people are working on things that seem unrelated. 3M is another great example of a company that's produced tens of thousands of products. They started as a mining company. That's what the 3M, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. Mining is the least of their interests now. They're into so many other things as well. So those are the 4 things I wanted to talk about, this idea of a central mission, maximizing learning, experimentation, and the next horizon. But there's one more thing I want to leave you with. One last word to share, and that is the word inspiration. All of these techniques are great. At the same time, you need to inspire. You need to be inspired as yourself, and you need to inspire others inside the organization. Does anyone recognize this man or this book, Little Prince, Antoine Saint-Exupéry? He has this great idea about inspiration. If you wanted to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood. Don't assign work. Teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. Inspire them. The reason I mention this very quote is in the training for leadership at Netflix. So at Netflix, and I talked to Sangeeta about this too, teach them to long for the endless immensity of a sea is giving people license to dream, to look ahead, to learn about things, and to act on them. And that's a very, very powerful way to foster innovation inside your organization. Because all of us long for some immensity somewhere. There's some version of what's out there that we all have inside us. And that means that it's in all of your organization, every single person. And that's a powerful way to foster innovation, is to inspire and encourage them to long for that immensity.